The moment I stepped into the living room, four pairs of eyes locked onto me: my husband, my sister, my son, and my father. But it was Dad's voice that cut through everything. "Nia, we need to talk." He wasn't angry. He wasn't frustrated. He looked hurt. And somehow that terrified me more than anything waiting in that room. Before we get into this, if you've ever been blindsided by the people closest to you, you're not alone. A quick like helps more people find stories like this. Now, back to the night everything changed. 3 days earlier, I was dragging my carry-on through Chicago O'Hare International Airport, exhausted and irritated. I'd flown to New York last minute to salvage a business deal my husband, Trayden, should have handled. But Trey had been stressed. That was his excuse for everything lately. Late messages, botched emails, rescheduled meetings, little slips that didn't matter alone, but together whispered that something wasn't right. Staring at the plane window on the way home, forehead pressed to the cold glass, I thought, why am I always the one holding everything up? By the time I landed in Atlanta, all I wanted was something simple, something warm, something grounding. A hug from my son, Khalil, home from Georgia State University, a calm moment with my husband, a breath that didn't feel heavy. But peace wasn't waiting for me. Something else was. When I pulled into the driveway of our Decatur home, every downstairs light was on. Every single one. That alone stopped me. Trey usually worked late, Jada only came over when she needed something, and Dad, he never arrived unannounced to a full house gathering. Inside, the silence felt unnatural, like the whole place was holding its breath. "Trey?" I called. No answer. I set my scarf on the entry bench, and that's when I noticed it. The living room throw blanket had been folded the way Jada folds it. Perfect corners, tucked edges. Not the way I do. My stomach tightened. And right then, something in me whispered that whatever waited inside wasn't good. Then Dad's voice drifted from the living room. "Nia, we're in here." His tone was too calm, too controlled, too prepared. I stepped forward, stopped, and felt the air shift around me. They were all on the couch together. Trey, Jada, Khalil, Dad in the armchair. No TV on, no background noise, just thick, suffocating tension. Then my eyes caught something I shouldn't have seen. A tiny pink baby sock under the coffee table. Just one, alone, just lying there, like a warning. A chill crawled up my spine. "What's going on?" I asked. No one answered. Jada and Trey sat closer than they ever had before, knees almost touching, shoulders angled toward each other. And for a moment, I caught a look pass between them. Quick, nervous, enough to twist something in my gut. Dad pushed himself up slowly and rubbed his hands together like he didn't want to be the one speaking. "Nia, we need to talk." My voice came out thin. "About what?" Trey looked down. Jada's fingers knotted together. Khalil kept staring at the floor, and the way his voice cracked when he whispered, "Mom, just sit down," told me he already knew everything. I didn't sit. "Someone explain," I said quietly. Dad's jaw clenched. "There's been a situation, and I needed to be here before anyone said something they couldn't take back." Fear prickled under my skin. Is someone hurt? What is this? Khalil swallowed hard. "Mom, things changed while you were gone." The room felt like it tilted slightly. Dad looked straight at Trey. He said, "Tell her." Trey's voice shook when he finally spoke. "Nia, Jada and I, we've gotten close." Time didn't slow. It just stopped. Close. My brain locked up, refusing to process the words, replaying them again and again until they felt unreal. What does that mean? I whispered. Khalil shifted, guilt flickering in his eyes. Mom, things at home are different now. Different how? Trey wiped his hands on his jeans. We didn't plan for any of this. It just... Mad? I let out a stunned, breathless laugh I didn't recognize. You're calling this unplanned? Jada leaned forward, voice trembling. Nia, please. I never wanted to hurt you. I kept my eyes on Trey. You two were sitting close the second I walked in. You didn't even try to hide it. Dad's voice sharpened. Khalil, he said firmly, your mama deserves better than this. You show her respect. Khalil's jaw tightened. He looked torn, caught between loyalty and manipulation. Trey tried again. We were trying to tell you gently. There is no gentle way to tell your wife you've crossed the line with her sister. Silence felt like a heavy blanket. The tiny pink sock under the coffee table felt like it was staring at me. Why was it there? I didn't have that answer yet, but my body already knew it meant something worse. Dad stepped closer, voice soft. Nia, there's more they need to say. My breath hitched. What more? I whispered. Jada's eyes filled with tears. Trey looked sick. Khalil closed his eyes like he already knew what was coming. Dad exhaled. They weren't just getting close. Ice spread through my chest. What were you planning? Jada and Trey exchanged the look. Not guilty this time. Scared. Khalil rubbed his palms on his jeans, hands shaking. Dad's words cut through the room like a blade. They've been planning something behind your back. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. What planning? Dad didn't hesitate. Baby, they want you out of this house. It hit like a punch. My breath stuttered. The room wavered slightly. A cold numbness crawled up my spine. Khalil opened his mouth, voice breaking. Dad told me it would be better for the family, that things would make more sense if... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. They'd already decided my future without me. I stared at the three people I loved and realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was a plan. A plan I wasn't supposed to survive emotionally or otherwise. But the next thing they said would make betrayal look gentle.
Dad's words hit me like a punch to the chest. They want you out of this house. For a split second, my body stopped working. My breath caught, my pulse thudded unevenly, and the room felt like it narrowed around me. Then Jada pressed a trembling hand against her stomach, and suddenly, that tiny pink baby sock on the floor wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a message. Naya, breathe, Dad whispered, his hand hovering near my elbow like he was ready to catch me if I fell. But breathing felt impossible. I forced one shaky inhale, then another. You want me gone? I asked Trey, staring at him. From my own house? Trey's lips parted, but Jada jumped in front of him. It's not what you think. It's exactly what she thinks, Khalil snapped. His voice cracked, raw and betrayed. Mom, I didn't want to be part of this. I swear. Dad glared at Trey. You dragged that boy into something grown folks can't even justify. It's complicated. No, I said sharply. It's disgusting. It's cruel. And it's something you chose. My voice rose without my permission, anger slicing through the shock. For a split second, even Dad flinched. Jada wiped her eyes. Naya, listen, we didn't set out to hurt you. Then what did you set out to do? I took a step closer. Make me disappear? Her hand slid back to her stomach. My heart jumped painfully. Jada, what is that? My voice barely came out. Why are you holding your stomach like that? She froze. Trey stiffened. Khalil's eyes widened. Not in surprise, in recognition. Like suddenly he was connecting dots he didn't want to see. Dad whispered, Lord help us.
Jada's voice cracked. I didn't want you to find out this way. Find out what? The silence stretched long enough to snap nerve endings. Trey stepped in front of her instinctively, shielding her. My world tilted. No, I whispered. No, you didn't. Naya, Trey said soft and pathetic. We're having a baby. Everything inside me dropped. The air, my thoughts, the floor, everything. A cold numbness crept up my spine. A baby, I repeated blankly. With my sister? Jada sobbed. Naya, please, don't. My voice cracked like glass. Don't cry. You don't get to cry. Dad muttered a curse and apologized to the air like the room needed cleansing. Khalil stood so abruptly the couch shook. You two are unbelievable, he shouted. You didn't just cheat, you're trying to replace her. Jada covered her mouth, trembling. Trey turned toward Khalil. Khalil, listen. No, his voice cracked. You told me this was some family plan. You didn't tell me this. He pointed at Jada's stomach. The room suffocated under the weight of all the lies. My own body shook uncontrollably. A metallic taste coated my tongue. The baby sock under the table blurred again. Dad moved closer. Naya, sit before you fall. I'm fine, even though my knees felt hollow. I wrapped my arms around myself, steadying my breath, grounding my body against the spinning room. Something deeper than betrayal pulsed through this moment. This wasn't an affair gone wrong. This was an agenda. Why? I finally whispered. Why would you do this to me? Why now? Trey swallowed. We didn't plan for. Stop saying that. The shout tore out of me before I could stop it. Nothing about this is an accident. You don't just accidentally betray your wife with her sister. Jada flinched. We want a fresh start, she said through tears. I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh. It was a broken sound I'd never heard come out of me. So your fresh start requires destroying me. Trey stiffened. Dad stepped closer to me, protective. Trey, you mean the house Naya inherited from her mama? The house she paid every bill on? That house? Trey didn't speak. He didn't have to. Khalil shook his head, eyes wet. So, the baby gets a nursery, but I grew up sharing a room? That's insane. Trey snapped back at him. That's not fair. No, Khalil shot back. What's not fair is what you're doing to Mom. I stepped closer, eyes locked on Trey. Tell me the truth. Why do you want me out? Silence. Then Jada whispered. Because if you stay, people will judge us. My mouth opened wide. Judge you? Trey stepped in. We need space. And legally, since the baby's on the way. Legally? I repeated. The word cracked something inside me. Jada's face paled. Trey swallowed. We were told the home needs to be emotionally healthy for the baby, and if it isn't, the court could intervene. Dad's eyes sharpened like a blade. Who told you that garbage? Trey hesitated. Khalil spoke instead. They met someone, some advisor. They've been whispering about him all week. Jada shook her head fast. No, she'll misunderstand. Dad's voice rumbled. Who? Trey caved. Her pastor. My stomach dropped. What pastor? Jada's voice softened into something almost reverent. He's not just a pastor. He says I have a calling. He sees potential in me. He understands what families are supposed to look like. Dad growled. That sounds like control, not counseling. Jada took a step back, shaking. You don't understand him. He sees people. He helped Trey realize what he truly needed. Someone grounded. Someone who could carry. She stopped herself. Dad stepped forward.
Carry what, Jada? She didn't answer. Trey rubbed his forehead. He wants what's best for the baby. And that includes removing me? I whispered. Trey didn't look up. That was answer enough. My throat tightened. What exactly did he say? Trey lifted his eyes, full of fear. He said, after the baby comes, you shouldn't be in the picture. The room went silent, dead silent. My heart chilled. Trey continued, voice breaking. He said he has a plan, a structured plan, to push you out, emotionally, socially, legally, until you have no place left here. My breath stopped where it was. A plan, I whispered, to erase me. Dad stepped in front of me like instinct. Khalil stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. Jada covered her stomach. Trey looked like a man who finally realized what he'd done. I wasn't standing in front of a broken marriage. I was standing in front of a conspiracy, and someone outside my family was pulling the strings. The pastor, the advisor, the man Jada trusted more than her own blood, and he wanted me gone. Completely. Because whatever he wanted from my sister required me not to exist in their lives, not even as a memory. This wasn't betrayal. This was extraction. A removal. A replacement. And the worst part, I hadn't even heard the darkest truth yet.
The second Trey said that Pastor had a plan to push me out, my father's face changed. Not with anger, not with shock, but with recognition. A recognition that scared me far more than anything Trey or Jada had said so far. Dad stared at Jada, voice steady but sharp. Baby, what did that man tell you? And what she whispered next didn't just break my heart. It broke reality. He said God reveals truth to the chosen. My breath caught. Chosen, I repeated. Chosen for what? Jada hesitated, her eyes shifting between all of us, flickering with doubt for the first time. Dad stepped closer. Answer your sister. Jada swallowed. For a new family. My pulse stopped cold. A new family? I whispered. With my husband? Jada's shoulders shook. He said Trey and I had a calling, a purpose, that Trey needed someone spiritually grounded, someone fit to raise a child in faith. I blinked, stunned. In faith? You think faith justifies sleeping with your sister's husband? Jada burst into tears. He said you were spiritually blocking Trey, that your energy was too heavy for a baby. Dad inhaled sharply. Oh no, this is a control tactic. Khalil looked between us. What does Dad even mean? Dad stared at Trey and Jada like he was looking at two people caught in spiderwebs. Nia, he said softly, there are men who use religion like a weapon, twist God's name to isolate people. I've dealt with a man like that before. I looked at him sharply. When? For a moment, a shadow crossed his face, something old and painful. Back when I was your age, before you were born. And I swore I'd never let anything like that touch my family again. My skin prickled. Tell me everything he told you, all of it. Trey rubbed the back of his neck. He said the baby was a sign. Proved Trey and I were meant to build a foundation together, clean and uncontaminated. My mouth dropped. Uncontaminated? What does that even mean? Dad's head snapped toward Jada. Who used that word? Him? She nodded silently. Yes, he said your presence would poison the spirit of the child. I stumbled back, breath catching. Khalil's voice broke. Poison? What kind of pastor says that? Trey looked ashamed. He told us courts care about emotional stability, that if we documented enough of your reactions, it could justify pushing you out. What reactions? I shouted. I haven't done anything. Jada wiped her face. He said career women get overwhelmed, that your ambition makes the home unstable. My voice cracked. So now ambition is a problem? Dad touched my arm gently. Calm, baby. He wants you emotional so they can say it's you. The realization hit me like ice. This pastor wasn't just manipulating them, he was building a case against me. Khalil stepped forward. What else did he make y'all do? Trey hesitated. Jada looked down. Dad's voice dropped to a warning. Say it. Trey exhaled shakily. He told us to create distance, financial, emotional, legal. My voice narrowed. Legal? Trey nodded. He said the home must be emotionally healthy for the baby, and if it isn't, the courts could intervene. Dad cursed under his breath. He's lying. That ain't how custody works. But Jada wasn't done. Her voice trembled. He wanted me to join his women's circle. He said I had a light, a calling, that the baby was meant for something holy. My stomach twisted. Holy how? Jada cried harder. He said the baby should be raised under him, under his guidance, that Trey needed a spiritual father, and that I needed someone to teach me to be a mother the right way. Dad whispered, "This ain't church, this is a cult." My voice cracked. So a stranger convinced you to break my family, take my house, erase me, all because he said you two were chosen? Trey swallowed. It made sense at the time. Or, I said, trembling, you liked being chosen. For the first time, shame flickered across Jada's face. Then suddenly, Trey stepped back, fast, eyes widening in fear, like a memory hit him hard. Dad noticed it instantly. What did you remember? Trey's voice shook. He told me something privately. Something I wasn't supposed to repeat. Say it, Dad demanded. Trey's voice cracked. He said he'd come tonight. Every hair on my arms stood on end. Come here? I whispered. Trey nodded. He said he needed to oversee the transition, make sure the conversation went how he wanted. Jada gasped. He said outsiders bring darkness. He said he needed to guide us. Dad snapped his head toward the clock. Trey's voice whispered. He said 9 p.m. Dad's eyes followed Trey's. The wall clock read 8:47. Dad straightened, steady, calm, terrifyingly focused. Everybody listen to me, he said quietly. When that man shows up, you do exactly what I say. His eyes locked onto mine. Because I've seen what men like him do when someone gets in their way. And none of us were prepared for what happened when that door finally opened.
At 9:02 p.m., the doorbell didn't ring. It buzzed, long, slow, deliberate, like someone was announcing power, not arrival. Every muscle in my body locked. Dad froze, Trey froze. Jada pressed both hands to her stomach. Khalil moved closer to me. And I realized something terrifying. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to take control. The buzzing stopped. Silence slammed into the room. Dad turned toward me, voice low. Nia, stay behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. My breath shook. Dad, please, he said, eyes steady. Trust me. A knock followed. Not normal. 3 taps, pause. 2 taps. A pattern. Jada gasped. Dad's eyes narrowed. How does he expect you to answer that? Jada whispered. He said if he knocks like that, the door should be opened by whoever's most prepared to follow instructions. Trey's face drained. He told me that too. Prepare to follow instructions. The words made my stomach twist. Dad's jaw flexed. Yeah, that's cult behavior. Dad straightened, calm and deadly. Khalil, get your phone. Don't record yet, just have it ready. Khalil nodded. Trey, you don't touch that door. Trey swallowed. I wasn't planning to. Jada, Dad said, stand by the wall. Don't take one step toward him. She whimpered. He doesn't like being kept waiting. Dad replied. And I don't like grown men using my daughter's home like a stage. The knock came again, harder. Dad walked forward and opened the door. The pastor stood there, mid-40s, tall, too calm, eyes that scanned the room like he was looking for cracks. He smiled, a slow, rehearsed, calculated smile. Good evening, he said warmly. Dad didn't return it. You must be the pastor. I am. And you must be Walter. He said my father's name like he owned it. Dad didn't blink. State your business. The pastor stepped inside without permission. Just walked in, like this was his house. Rage surged through me. Who does that? He looked at Jada first. Jada, you didn't tell me Walter would be here. Dad stiffened. She doesn't owe you reports about who's in her family's home. The pastor ignored him. His eyes moved to Trey. Trey, you did well initiating the conversation. Trey shook his head. No, don't talk like that. I didn't. The pastor lifted a hand to silence him. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. Examining me, measuring me. Like he was deciding where I fit in his plan. Nia, he said softly, you must feel overwhelmed. I didn't answer. Dad stepped in front of me. She's not talking to you. The pastor studied Dad. Are you speaking for her? I'm protecting her. No need, he replied, smiling gently. I bring peace. Khalil muttered, you bring mess, under his breath. The pastor's eyes flicked toward him. Anger is a sign of instability in the household. That's what I've been helping Trey and Jada fix. My voice cracked open. Fix? Fix what? My marriage? My home? My life? The pastor didn't look at me. He looked at Trey instead. Trey, she's escalating. Dad blocked me with his arm. You don't talk about her like she's not here, and you don't diagnose anything. The pastor faced him fully. You're frightened. Losing control often feels that way. Dad smirked. I'm not losing control, son. I'm regaining it, starting now. The pastor's smile flickered. He didn't like that. The mask slipped. Dad leaned slightly forward. You think you don't recognize you? Love bombing, isolating them, making them dependent on your approval. The pastor didn't respond. Dad continued. You told them to separate financially, document behavior, push Nia out so the baby could be spiritually pure. The pastor didn't deny a thing. He just shifted tactics. Nia, he said sharply, if you want to remain in this home, you must demonstrate calmness. Courts look at... Dad cut him off. You are not a judge, not a counselor, not God. You're a manipulator who found two vulnerable people to feed off of. The pastor's eyes hardened. You're interfering. Dad's voice dropped to ice. That's the point. The pastor turned to Jada. Jada, come here. Dad barked, stay where you are. Jada froze. The pastor tried again, voice soft. Sweetheart, we talked about this. You need guidance. You need someone who can shape you into the mother you're meant to be. My stomach turned. Shape her? Into what? He looked at Trey. And Trey, remember what we said about unstable environments affecting the baby? His eyes flicked to me. Some women complicate things. Dad stepped forward. Call my daughter unstable again? I dare you. For the first time, the pastor's confidence cracked. The mask slipped. Jada, Trey, come stand by me. Neither moved.
He sharpened his tone. Come, now. Trey shook his head. No. Jada clutched her stomach. I'm scared, she whispered. She said it out loud. Finally. The pastor blinked in disbelief. Scared? Of me? Dad stepped in between them like a shield. You're done. The pastor exhaled slowly. You don't understand what you're inviting into your home, Walter. Dad glared. I understand perfectly. You're upset your control is slipping. The pastor's voice deepened. This will end badly for your daughter. Dad stepped closer. It will end badly for you if you don't walk out of this house right now. The pastor stared at each of us slowly, deliberately, like he was memorizing the room. Then he said something that made the air go thin. Nia won't win this. The transition has already begun. He stepped back toward the door, but not to leave. He reached inside his coat. Dad reacted instantly, and everything exploded at once.
Dad moved the second the pastor reached into his coat, not out of panic, out of instinct, a trained instinct. Hands where I can see them, Dad snapped. But the pastor didn't hesitate or freeze. He simply smiled. That smile made my blood run cold. Dad grabbed his wrists, but instead of a weapon, the pastor slowly pulled out a thick manila folder tied with a red string. Trey sagged with relief. Khalil exhaled. But Dad didn't relax. Neither did I. The pastor slid the red string off like he'd done it 1,000 times, opened the folder, and tapped the top page. This, he said calmly, is the transition plan. My stomach dropped. Jada let out a small, wounded noise. The pastor flipped to the first page. Step 1. Establish emotional instability through documentation, already in progress. My throat tightened. Step 2. Unify the new parental structure. He looked at Trey and Jada. Step 3. Remove external influences. Dad stepped closer. External influences? That's what you call family? I call it obstruction, the pastor replied. He flipped another page. Step 4. Secure the residence. My breath caught. He meant my home. Step 5. Prepare the mother for guided childbirth under faith supervision. Jada's hands flew protectively to her stomach. Dad snatched the folder from him. Inside were typed bullet points, dates, their names already filled in, empty lines for signatures, a seal I didn't recognize, a checklist marked Phase 1, active. Dad's face went dark with anger. You made a blueprint for taking over my daughter's life. The pastor didn't deny it. I'm facilitating what God revealed. Then he looked at me. Nia, you're holding on to things never meant for you. A marriage, a home, a role in this family that was always temporary. Temporary? I whispered. I didn't raise my voice. Cold anger doesn't need volume. He spoke slowly, deliberately. They are part of a new family now, one you don't belong to. Khalil snapped. Shut up! You're brainwashing them. The pastor nodded like he expected that outburst. Anger, another log entry, another example of household instability. Khalil froze. What log? Dad's jaw set. He's building a file for court. The pastor's lips curved. Exactly. Jada suddenly burst. Stop, all of you, stop. The pastor turned to her. Jada, sweetheart, fear is natural during transition. No, she cried. You said it would feel safe. You said Trey would support me. You said this was our destiny. And it is, he whispered. No, it's not, she screamed, backing away from him. For the first time, she wasn't looking at him with devotion. She was looking at him with terror. A muscle twitched in his jaw, a tiny crack in the mask. Jada, he repeated, voice sharpening, come here. She shook her head violently,
No. Come, he said again, quieter. No, she sobbed. Dad moved between them. She said no. The pastor's eyes went cold. Jada, don't forget your place. Then Trey stepped forward. No, he said, voice shaking. None of this feels right anymore. The pastor's head snapped toward him. Don't be weak. Trey's eyes started to Jada's stomach, then to the pastor, then back again, like he finally realized who actually had power over him. I'm not weak. I'm scared and confused. You told me we were chosen. You told me she had a light. I told you the truth. The pastor interrupted sharply. Trey, I ordered, stand by me. Trey stepped back toward Jada instead. The pastor's eyes widened just a fraction, but for someone like him, that fraction meant panic. He turned to Khalil. You, step away from your mother. Khalil shook his head. Over my dead body. The pastor's voice snapped like a whip. Walter's blood taints you. Rebellion runs in you just as it ran in him. Dad stepped forward. Say one more thing about my son. But the pastor wasn't looking at Dad now. He was looking at me. You fight too hard, Nia. Women who fight this hard are hiding something. My heartbeat stumbled. What are you talking about? Your past, he whispered. Dad stiffened, barely, but enough for me to feel it. The pastor leaned in closer. You think they betrayed you. His smile sharpened. But you betrayed someone first. My breath caught. Dad shoved him back with his forearm. That's enough. The pastor's smile didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. The truth always cracks through. Dad pointed toward the door. You're done here. Leave. The pastor didn't budge, didn't blink. Then he reached into his coat again. Dad lunged forward. Jada screamed, Trey yelled, Khalil jumped. But this time, the pastor didn't pull out a folder. He pulled out a phone. He held it up, screen glowing, recording in progress. Dad froze. The pastor raised his voice, clearly and theatrically. This is documentation. Walter Henderson assaulting me in a domestic situation. The pregnant woman is distressed. The environment is unsafe. There are minors in danger. He wasn't talking to us. He was talking to the recording. He was staging evidence, framing us, building the case he'd planned from day one. Dad stared at the phone like it was poison. You sneaky... The pastor stepped back toward the door. I have what I need. The transition will proceed. He looked directly at me. And Nia, your past will finish the job. Then he turned and walked out the door. Just like that. Gone. The room turned to chaos instantly. Khalil shouting, Jada crying, Trey panicking, Dad pacing like a caged storm. And me, I stood completely still, frozen. Because one question clawed through me so hard, it hurt to breathe. What past was he talking about? And even worse, why did Dad look like he already knew? Dad didn't move when the front door shut behind the pastor. He just stared at it like it was something alive. Then he said the one sentence that made the whole room tilt. Naya, he knows because I told him. The silence that followed was suffocating. I felt the floor tilt under my feet. You... what? Dad rubbed his face like the years were catching up to him all at once. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I didn't think he'd twist it. I thought, what did you tell him? My voice cracked softly. Jada suddenly backed into the wall, shaking. It was my fault. I'm the one who mentioned Mom. Trey held her arm. Jada, slow down. That stopped him. No, this is mine. He looked at me with eyes full of things he never said. Naya, your mother struggled after you were born. Badly. Postpartum. She hid it from you, but she was hurting. My breath stuttered. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because she begged me not to, he whispered.
She didn't want you thinking you caused it. You didn't. But she thought if you knew, you'd blame yourself. The room blurred. Dad continued, voice trembling. When Jada started meeting with that pastor, she mentioned your mother struggled. She didn't say it was postpartum. She didn't say it was decades ago. She didn't say your mother healed. She just mentioned it. Jada sobbed harder. I didn't think he'd twisted. I didn't know. Dad nodded. He used your mother's pain as proof you're unstable, as evidence to push you out. My chest cracked open. I closed my eyes, let the truth hit, then opened them again, burning with a different fire. Listen to me, I said quietly. Everyone froze. Whatever he thinks he knows about me, whatever he thinks he can use, that stops tonight. I looked at Jada and Trey. He manipulated you, yes, but you let him in. You let him into my house, my marriage, my family. Trey lowered his head. I'm done letting him decide who I am, I said. Khalil stepped beside me. We got you, Mom. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. I already called someone, a friend. What kind of friend? Trey asked nervously. Dad answered, a detective. My heart jumped. Dad? I knew his pattern. I knew he'd come tonight. I knew he'd escalate. That's when I noticed the faint reflection of red and blue lights moving across the curtains. A loud knock hit the door. Not his knock. This one was forceful, official. Dad opened it. 2 officers and a detective walked in. Walter, the detective said. Dad handed him the manila folder. Human coercion, manipulation, custody interference, property targeting, you name it. The detective flipped through it. This is a cult playbook. His radio crackled. Suspect approaching the property. The pastor. He came back. The detective faced the door. Everyone behind me. The door opened. The pastor froze. Only for a half second. Then he smiled. Officer, he said, shifting into that spiritual voice. I'm here for a wellness check. Dad laughed. Yeah, right. The detective held up the folder. Explain this. The pastor's smile twitched. These are spiritual. These are evidence, the detective cut in, of coercion and fraud. You have no authority. I have full authority, the detective said, stepping forward to take you in for questioning. The pastor snapped. You don't understand. She's unstable. She is the danger. He pointed at me. And that was the line that shattered whatever spell he still had left. Jada screamed, no, she isn't. You lied to us. You twisted everything. Trey stood beside her. She's right. Khalil stepped forward too. You're done. Dad whispered, low and deadly, not in my family. Not ever again. The pastor lunged toward the hallway, but officers grabbed him instantly, hands behind his back, cuffs snapping, his voice cracking. This isn't over. She will fall. The transition. They dragged him out mid-sentence. The door slammed, and he was gone. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Jada collapsed into full sobs. Trey held her, crying with her. Khalil hugged me tight. Dad finally sat down, exhausted. The detective returned. We'll be in touch, but you're safe now. The quiet that followed wasn't fear. It was the first peace we'd felt in months. Mom, Khalil said, are we okay? I nodded. We're going to be. Jada moved in with Dad for a while. She started real therapy, real healing. Trey eventually moved out too. We filed for divorce quietly. No drama. Just closure. The pastor faced charges. Turns out we weren't the only victims. He was never a spiritual bride. He was a predator hiding behind scripture. And one by one, we all started rebuilding. But the person who changed most was me, because I learned something. People can twist faith. People can twist your past. They can twist your family. But the truth doesn't stay buried. And with the right people beside you, your truth rises back up. And so do you. If this story meant something to you, thank you for listening. And if you want more stories like this, you already know what to do.